To the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, April 24th, 2019. We are at the Pownell Elementary School here in the cafeteria. We just had our second Dine and Discuss, and thank you for the couple of folks who made it out. And just a quick reminder that we have one last Dine and Discuss at 6 o'clock before the May 8th board meeting at Freeport High School. So one last opportunity to come out, ask any questions you have about the upcoming budget in advance of the three-town budget meeting on the 22nd of May. Kate will not be with us this evening. She is excused for a work event, and everyone else is here from the board, hoping our student rep is going to make it as well. And we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. To the left. So we don't have any minutes to review and vote on tonight. So adjustments to the agenda? No? None. Good news and recognition. So we'll put a hold on A in case Clay is able to make it and have a quick update from him. But we'll move on to Lisa Demick. Good news from Pownell Elementary School.
Good evening. So it's Administrative Assistant Day, so I have to start by giving a shout out to Jill Pettengill, who is just the heart of our office, and to all of our administrative assistants in the district. I think no matter which office we walk into, you know, the tone that they set is so important. So just a shout out to Jill and to Ginny, right? Because Ginny's all of our administrative assistants. I thought tonight I'd just kind of update you a little bit on one of our action plan goals, which is around increasing student agency and achievement through public displays of learning. We've really been very deliberate about our buddy program, and so our kindergartners are matched with our third graders, our first graders are matched with our fourth graders, and our second graders are matched with our fifth graders. And the teachers have found that this year they've just really been deliberate around using that as an opportunity for kids to have an audience of other kids, to have another purpose for teaching and for celebrating together the progress. Another program that connects to that is our peer mentor program that's been able to be expanded, where our older kids have helped with recess activities and gym, and that's been expanded as well to even be for some kids who need sort of some extra sort of personal attention at recess, having an older buddy who can even help them get their snow pants on, or, you know, those kinds of things have been just something that we've really seen. We're really trying to take advantage of that pre-K to 5-ness that we have here around helping kids to see purpose and relevance of the work that they're doing. We reworked our assembly format to also do that so that the kids have more of a say in what they're doing, and they're helping to lead that, and they're doing it with their buddies. It's also a time we do a lot of public recognition of progress, achievement, and the mindset work that we've been doing here. We have a fabulous new nurse here at Pownell Elementary, Abigail Levitt, and through her 5210 work, next week we're looking forward to celebrating Screen Free Week. So she's really been instrumental in that, and we're gonna go screen free for the week. We feel like our fifth graders kind of have an advantage because they're off to Shawanki next week. So they're feeling like they've got Tuesday through Friday kind of, you know, under their belt. We'll also go as a whole school at the end of this month to the theater at Monmouth. Each year our Impact Parent Group sponsors some kind of a whole school cultural activity, and this year they're doing Tales Twice Told at the theater of Monmouth. So again, thinking about those dinner table conversations, what are the opportunities we can give kids to have like experiences that can just kind of expand their learning outside of school. at the end of each school year, we like to do something that kind of shakes things up. You know, it's a long march to June, especially when it's June 21st. And so we always like to do something that kind of sort of sparks new learning for kids and kind of gets them to think about the fact that learning doesn't only happen in school, that it happens outside of school as well. So this year, our focus is going to be around how do careers use reading, writing, and math well in their jobs. So we're going to do some job fair work, and that will be something else we do K through 5. So it's a plug if any of you want to come and help us. We're really looking to help kids see how the work that they're doing, pays off in the long run. So Lindsay, I'm thinking you have some fraction work, right? So that's kind of what's happening here at Pownell.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
Questions for Lisa? Don't run off just yet. I hope your buddies are done with the snow pants helping. Please.
One can hope, right?
Thank you. Okay, public comment. We do have a few members of the public here. If you'd like to share anything with the board, now would be your first of 2 opportunities. Thank you. We will pass along the feedback. Okay, so we'll move on to report from the superintendent, district happenings.
All right. So yesterday, C-SPAN went to Freeport Middle School. They were there to celebrate the winners from the C-SPAN's nationwide documentary competition. And the theme of that competition was, what does it mean to be American? And C-SPAN received 2,923 documentaries from a record 6,318 students representing 48 states and Washington, D.C. 2 teams were celebrated yesterday from RSU 5. The first team, consisting of Alexander Dawson, Zane Aquilar, and Will Morris, received a 3rd place finish. And then Lauren Roussel and Isla Wilson received an honorable mention. And the students are the first from Maine to win any kind of award in this national competition, which has existed since 2006. So I think that's just very impressive, and congratulations to our students who were recognized. I'm also happy to report our snack shack now has permanent electricity to it. And so we are ready for the spring sports. And now we are in the process of installing the PA system. We received unanimous approval from the town. While we were at our last board meeting, Craig and Pat Carroll were presenting to the town of Freeport, and they unanimously approved our proposal. So we have selected Pro AV, and they will be installing the new system. And it has been ordered, and they've informed us that it'll take about 3 to 4 days to install. And so we're hopeful that that will be up and running at some point before our spring sports are completed. The Strategic Planning Committee met this morning, and we have now analyzed all of the survey data that we received, and we're beginning the phase of identifying the focus areas for our strategic plan. And I have been assured again today that we feel like we will complete this work this year. Right now that feels a little daunting to me, but Mary Jane, our consultant, keeps reassuring me that yes, we'll have a plan in place by September. The legislature is very busy in Augusta, and I just wanted to bring your attention to LD 345, an act to help new teachers succeed. Will likely become law because it has received unanimous support from the Ed Committee and will be voted on by the full legislature soon. And this, if that passes, it'll reduce the probationary period for new teachers back to 2 years, starting in the year 2021. So that will have, I think, a pretty big impact on us. At the last board meeting, there was a question about, when you looked at the migration data, about how many superintendent's agreements do we have as of the same time period that are coming into the district, and Jenny estimates that to be around 11. So I just wanted to pass that information along. And then lastly, I just have the following resignations to report. Lexi Hunt is an ed tech at DCS. Bobby Monsell is a second grade teacher from Durham Community School. Amy Wheeler is our math strategist at the elementary level. Melissa Mills, special ed teacher at Durham Community School. Cecilia Martin, fifth grade teacher at Durham Community School. And Michael Lawson, social studies teacher at Freeport High School. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Sure. Oh, yeah, sure.
What's the current probationary period? How long is it?
3 years.
3.
And that was just put into effect, I don't know, within, I would say, the last 10 years. And so it's already being reversed to 2 years. So that just means that we, from an administrative lens, I'm sure teachers are happy about the reduction, but from an administrative lens, it was nice to have the 3 years to really support new teachers before, having to make that final decision about whether to move them on to continuing contract or not.
So hopefully the new mentoring program will help that process as it moves back to 2 years. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other questions on the superintendent's report? Okay. Administrator reports, finance.
All right, in your packet you have the purple form that shows where we currently are. We are literally within a 0.2 percentage point of where we were last year at this point, so I feel very comfortable and confident in those numbers, and nothing that I can see in the future 3 weeks coming to light that would be concerning at this point in time. And I'm not suggesting that there's something after 3 weeks either. I'm just saying we never know until it happens, right? So at this point in time, I feel very comfortable with where we're landing for the end of the year, and I don't expect it to be something that we were not expecting.
Any questions for Michelle? Okay, thank you. Board comments and committee reports. So first on here is the board information exchange and agenda requests. If there were any items, I think maybe you talked about it in your last superintendent's report, the update from the multiple school boards that got together in Brunswick. Did you go over that? I don't know if we've given an update on that. I think Maddie was there, right? She did, okay. I know I had heard about it, but I wasn't sure if she just told me or if she shared it with the whole board. Yeah. It was like 3 weeks, but it feels like forever. Okay, Valerie.
So there are 2 items that I would like to touch upon. One is to request a workshop on finance. Michelle and I have been in communication because I had some questions about the overall strategy for the budget and undesignated fund balances and the audits and all kinds of things. And even though I've been on the board for quite a while, I didn't really understand all that well. She was extremely helpful. I think it would be great for all of us to get a presentation and know exactly where money goes, when, and when do we know how much money we have unexpended and all that, and what we do with that money. And then the other item I wanted to mention was the use of instructional time during the day. I would like for us to have a better grasp on when class time is used for activities that are non-instructional. And this is not just fundraisers, but other activities too.
Like what?
Well, for example, this week, our daughter, who is in 3rd grade at Maslaning, came back with a second set of photographs, spring photos, for example, that I had never heard before, and we've had kids in that school for many, many years, but apparently kids are being photographed twice now, and I'm wondering why we do that. and how often that happens in other places, and it's happening during the instructional day. So I don't know if there are other instances of situations like that, if this is just an anomaly. I understand from calling to the school that there's a renewed effort to fundraise more because there's they're in the negative now for field work for next year based on the new formula that we just instituted. So it just raised the flag as wanting to know more about what other things we do, and maybe this is just a one-off, but it made me wonder. So I thought I'd bring it up.
Okay. So I'm not, at this point for upcoming workshops, I'm not sure if we've got space on existing board meetings before we're through in June. But I had been talking a little bit with Michelle about some of the finance questions, and I said the exact same thing to Michelle, was like, I think we could definitely do a finance workshop, and to make a note for when we have our retreat August, to put that on the schedule for the upcoming year, because I think it is kind of complex, and I mean, obviously Kate, John, and I deal with it a bit more because of the finance committee, but I mean, there's still parts of it that I don't fully understand. So I think that's a great idea. And you know, we could put those on the list of things to discuss and decide if, as a board, we feel like we want to do a workshop on them. So, yeah, Maddie.
For August, can we sort of have an idea, maybe from Michelle, of like 10 different things that she thinks might be worth reviewing, and we would then determine as a board what things we think we need to cover in that workshop? You know, if she were to do a Finance 101, you know, what would be chapters 1 through 10, and then we would determine what we think is the most important.
Sure. Do you think you could do that?
I can try.
Yeah. Or we can, I mean, yeah. I mean,
the Finance
we
Committee could do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we could come up with, I think, you know, what the very basics, right? Because we have some new people to the board that, you know, this is their first budget season. We'll have another new person come on just after the budget season, and so we'll have sort of that basic 101, and then a little bit more, some detail, I think, would be helpful. So, yeah, some suggested areas of content would be all right. Yeah, Maura.
I'm not sure where the Finance Committee is at with the formula, but I was hoping to ask Michelle for some information so I could have a better understanding of the state funding to the schools before we have that conversation. So I don't know if that would be helpful to everyone else too. But
that's a good point. I think so. John, Kate, and I in the Finance Committee are starting to build that presentation for the board, and I think there was some expectation that we were going to have, like, this is how the cost-sharing formula works. This is what it applies to, you know, and clearly where some of the numbers come from is from the state forms, and I don't know what they call that. Yeah, the ED2. I don't know if that's got a technical term, but the subsidy paperwork worksheets. So there'll be some of that in there too, I think. Yeah.
I have a slow math brain, so to the extent possible, I would like to see that information before we're sitting here, because I'm not gonna track with you unless I can spend some time alone.
Read it. Spend some time alone with it.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think it'll definitely go out ahead of time so that folks can read it. You know, we've heard from the towns that they want to see it before the meeting as well, so that they can come prepared to make a comment if they so choose. So, I mean, I think the expectation is that presentation would go out. I know not all of our presentations, when we have presentations, get distributed ahead of time, but certainly I think any data-heavy ones probably should. So. All right. Any other comments, questions, requests? Okay. Finance Committee. Hey, John, you want to do it?
Well, we continue to work on we continue to work on the funding formula. No decisions have been made yet. It's a complicated piece of paperwork, and we're trying to simplify it so that it'll be, in the end, understandable by everyone, even people with suspected. I don't think that's the case, but and that's it. That's about it.
All right, strategic communications.
Yellow sheet in your folder. Not a whole lot to report. We worked on reviewing the exit survey and finalizing some things, and it will be brought to the board. I don't know exactly which meeting, Becky, but it'll be coming to the board for review, the exit survey. And we also talked about discussed the frequency for the satisfaction survey going out, and decided to send it out every other year, as not trying to avoid overwhelming people with surveys. So it'll go out every other year. And we also worked on the workplace satisfaction survey, which is going to be distributed to the teaching staff soon now, because it's after April vacation. That's pretty much it. Working on surveys.
Maddie.
Similar question, are we going to have the chance to see that in advance of a meeting, so it's not just delivered to us at a meeting? The exits?
I feel like we already saw the exit survey.
I think we did see the
did.
exit survey.
The
I don't think
exit,
we've
yeah.
seen the workplace.
I'm thinking
No,
about
no.
the satisfaction survey,
Yeah.
I'm realizing.
The new
Yeah.
one that they're putting together.
Never.
Okay.
I guess I'll ask that question. Will we see the workplace satisfaction survey?
Before
Well-
we were going to distribute it.
Right.
Is the board wanting to see it before we distribute it?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I guess we had seen in prior surveys that had been done, we had seen them.
Ahead of time.
I mean, I don't think it's absolutely necessary, and I certainly don't want to hold up the collection of data if this is when you feel is the best time to be getting it.
So I could definitely just send it out on my weekly board update?
Yep,
and
that'd be great.
Okay.
You've got
When
your
is
finger
that
on
being
the button.
distributed again?
I was going to agree that I think it's important to send out anything that we will send out to staff or parents, the whole board should see. And then if people have comments, maybe we can make a little time at our next board meeting so they can, even if it's during board comments, people can say something if they need to say something about it.
You envision it going out before our next board meeting, though?
I did, but I don't know that it's critical. So we can, I mean, our next board meeting is May 8th.
2 weeks.
Yep.
Still falls, that's still after April vacation.
Right.
Exactly. So we'll do that.
Yeah, I do agree, and I mean, I have a high degree of confidence in the committee, but I think given the time that we've devoted to talking about workplace satisfaction, we should all have eyes on it.
Yeah, I mean, as a board goal of employee retention, trying to make that a focus for us, I think that could be a really important tool, so. All right, is that it for you? All right. All right, policy review. Cynthia? Becky? You're not jumping up?
So I think past practice is for the second read, Cynthia doesn't get up to
Rehash what we've
to
already
rehash
discussed.
what you've already discussed. So, if there are specific questions, that's fine, but otherwise, the three policies before you are the student fundraising, student activities, and homework for the second read.
Jen?
So there's just a couple of, that I've noticed a couple of like grammatical things.
So I think.
We don't do those, right? Like that's,
I might just shoot an email to her on those,
okay.
and then they'll get those corrected. I mean, as long as it's not changing intent, it's just grammar. So So I would take a motion for consideration and
Over here.
approval of the following policies. Yes.
I make a motion that we accept the 3 policies for the second read.
That's what I was doing. Okay, motion from Candy. Do we have a second? Erica? Any discussion? Vali?
Yeah, I would like to propose some amendments to student fundraising. Is that how it's called, JJE? So the first amendment that I would like to propose is to add A12, a sentence that reads, all fundraising activities shall comply with all applicable board policies. And this is in the spirit. Oh, okay. I would make a motion to amend the policy by the JJE policy to add A12 to read, all fundraising activities shall comply with all applicable board policies. And this is to respond to Lindsay's request from the first read that there needs to be some coordination between the policies that we already have, and she mentioned wellness policy, and it's closely related to fundraising activities. So that's one amendment that I propose.
So you're doing them individually? Okay. So, so what we're going to do is we're going to vote on the amendments. So I feel like we should probably separate the, are all of your amendments to JJE? Okay. Why don't we separate the policies, and if you don't mind, let's just do the other 2. Would you amend your first and your second to approve the, just the DFF and IKB? So so if there's going to be discussion on student fundraising, I'm suggesting that we just, if there isn't further discussion on homework and student activity funds, that we do the second read vote for those 2, get those put to bed, and then we can deal with fundraising. So you're okay amending your motion and your second to that? Okay. So let's just do a vote on the second 2 policies. So the student activity funds, so DFF, and homework, IKB. Everybody good with that? Any questions on those? All those in favor? Opposed? None. Thank you. Okay. So now we're back to, can I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve JJE.
Okay. Erica, would you like to second that motion? Sure. Okay. So Vali, your amendment is to add A12.
A12 to read, all fundraising activities shall comply with all applicable board policies.
Okay. All right. So how this works is we vote on the amendment. So you're voting on whether you want to add this this additional A12 bullet. And then if it passes, then the original motion is now amended to include this. If it fails, we're back to the original motion of how it was laid out. Everybody understand? Does Vali have a second for her motion first? Okay, Lindsay, thank you. My question is, for the policy committee, does the addition of that create an issue from your perspective?
I can't see what issue it might create. I'm trying to understand what situation it might pertain to. Can you explain a little more? I know you said something earlier, but I'd just like to hear a little bit more about why.
Yeah, there was a question on how we inform people of policies that are connected to each other. So I think in the case of this one, because it's so closely connected to wellness policy, it would be a good idea to make a specific line to read that this policy in particular needs to comply with the wellness policy or any other policies, but wellness was the one that Lindsay was concerned about. And I'm not sure everyone's aware that they're connected, and that we have two that probably should be taken into account together.
Well, I think they're not currently connected, right? but this would tie them together. Erica?
So just to clarify, I think this came up when they were talking about fundraisers, like if they were going to sell candy bars or not. So are you saying that you're going to tie these together so that if they want to do a fundraiser of selling candy bars, but it doesn't match the wellness policy of the school providing nutritional food, does that mean that it's going to restrict the kind of fundraising that they can do in the future? Then I can't back this.
Jen?
She
hold
works
on.
at a chocolate factory, though. So maybe. I didn't even go there.
My comment is that I think that that's kind of one of those like disclaimer at the end of everything type of statements, and if we're going to do that, we have to do that with every policy that we say. The homework policy also does not, has to go with all other board policies. Like that has to be an end sentence then on every policy to do a CYA kind of thing. I mean, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I just think that was a comment.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of our policies, we can't have necessarily conflicting policies. And it's hard to speak to the wellness one because I apologize, I don't have it memorized. I'm not sure if it says like, where available, we'll try to make healthy options. And, and does that mean that we can't sell pies or we can only sell grapefruit? If it's like, we'll do our best to do healthy options, but it turns out that selling candy bars is the most, productive way, then maybe they keep it in mind, but it wouldn't necessarily limit their abilities. But I can't say that because I don't have the wellness policy memorized. Lindsay?
Would it be possible for someone to read the wellness policy, like, while we're talking about this, and bring up any?
They're gonna look in their laptops.
I mean, I could do it.
I think they're gonna look.
But maybe, because I think all of us might want benefit from hearing what phrases in there might be applicable.
Right, because I don't want to overly limit their choices.
In response to what Jen was saying, I don't think that's what Valley's amendment is going for. I don't think it's necessarily it wouldn't necessarily apply to the entire policy. It would apply to student fundraising. I think that's the intention of having it be A12, because we don't really have jurisdiction necessarily over those parent groups. So Section C is about booster clubs and parent groups. So that's what I suspect why you placed it where you did.
I think that's a good distinction.
So I guess that's a question, because that's a good point, Maddie. So are you only trying to limit, not you personally, I know Valley, but trying to look at limiting ones that students actually sell in connection with another policy, whether it be the wellness policy or something else, but not limit like parent groups or things like that? Is that the intention?
I wasn't actually making the distinction between one group or another. I think Maddie bringing that up, it's a great point.
Okay.
I hadn't thought of it. All I'm trying to do is just make people aware who are conducting fundraising activities that there is this other policy that should be looked into, and that's also why it was added as a cross-reference. So it's there already as a cross-reference. You may want to read this one because it is in the cross-reference list, but that sentence there makes it a little stronger than just leaving it as a footnote.
Any luck? JL is what it's called, if that's helpful. Oh, you're trying to find the spot that, yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to the comment about potentially putting on all the policies. It's an interesting point. I mean, like, what we're doing now is we're cross-referencing at the end of each policy, policies that we think are related. But they're in this vague terminology cross-reference. not like jurisdiction or something more, powerful. But it's an interesting point you bring up. And I think that in theory, I can't think of a situation where I would be okay with our school board policies being violated ever. I mean, the reason we have policies is because we're trying to create an environment that is healthy and supportive of the most effective learning. And so all activities should be following all policies. And I'm like, just as I'm kind of processing what you're saying. So, I mean, not to overcomplicate. No, I'm not ready to do anything like that. I'm still kind of like processing on the fly. Not ready to do that yet. But I mean, conceivably, we could change the footer to all policies to say something like, all policies. What did you say here? You said all fundraising. So we could say all policies shall comply with all other board policies, and then we could, maybe that's just like a statement at the end, and then cross-reference could be like a helpful, you might want to take a look at these because these are predictably related, or the school board sees these as overtly related. Right. And if there's something that we're not aware of in another policy, it also applies, but, I don't know, it's going to be something like that.
And to Jen's point, should it be like in the intro to our whole policy book that, we don't want contradicting policies. Yeah.
I mean, whether this sentence gets added or not, JL needs to be complied by. I mean, this is not going to change.
Complied with.
We are, like you say, beholden to comply with all policies, regardless of whether we say that in a new policy or not. I mean, we need to follow policies that we have already approved anyway. I was just trying to make it a little more clear that in this particular case, there are other policies that are directly applicable. But whether this sentence gets added or not, JL still needs to be complied with.
So I'm going to attempt to, it's probably 7 pages long, and so we're trying to find the exact place that might fit what we're talking about. So this says other school-based wellness activities. It's on page 2, 3 paragraphs. The schools, with prior approval of the superintendent, may implement other appropriate programs that support consistent wellness messages and promote healthy eating and physical activity. The board delegates the superintendent the responsibility for developing regulations or guidelines for healthy celebrations, and in parentheses, refreshments served at parties or celebrations during the school day, and the use of food as rewards in the instructional program. The school unit may develop programs that encourage staff to learn and engage in healthy lifestyle practices. There's nothing other than that really...
Is there anything there that, can you do a search for the word sugar?
Sure, I can,
actually.
actually.
I mean, I am seriously.
Sugar.
I mean, I'm concerned about
There's
that.
no word sugar in the policy.
There's no word sugar? What does it say about, because I thought there was language in there about, teachers aren't supposed, I swear I read that in there. Teachers aren't supposed to be, having cupcakes and candy.
It mentions that staff needs to model.
Yeah, model healthy
habits.
Oh.
That's it. It's very broad.
Oh.
Michelle? And it does say too, third paragraph from the bottom, it says, granted, it does say student organizations, but student organizations will be encouraged to engage in fundraising projects that are supportive of healthy eating and student wellness. That's a little, I mean, I don't think that's really impacts it either way, but at least fundraising is mentioned.
But I was going to say, it does, because that one was more like, Yeah. I appreciate the effort. Thank you, guys. So there is sort of that direct cross-reference to fundraising in the wellness policy. So, I mean, I think Jen's point is a good one, that, maybe it's just an overarching statement at the beginning that our policies are meant to be taken in conjunction with each other.
But isn't
I
that
don't-
really just implied?
Yeah, right. So do we need to specifically add it to this one? Maybe not, because I'm not sure the way it's written goes, you know what, I should check the wellness policy. You know what I mean? I mean, I think the cross-reference does probably tell people where things are interrelated. But yes.
I'm in favor of adding that line that you just read, Jeremy.
It's in the wellness.
But
She wants it in the
I want it in
fundraising.
this one.
Could we add it to the fundraising?
I mean, I kind of feel like having the cross-reference in there
Covers you?
points you to that, but that's just me.
I'm a little leery. The spirit behind wanting to do sort of a disclaimer in all our policies, I'm in favor of that idea, but I'm a little wary of it without legal counsel, because I'm picturing sort of a never-ending wormhole situation that we can't even conceive of. We might be in some situation that we don't know about. So I don't know if we can. First of all, I don't know if we should. I'd prefer for us to be a little more specific about what our intentions are here. So if our intentions are to comply with the wellness policy, we should more explicitly have a line that talks about the wellness policy.
Yeah, I think I'm even more in favor of adding a line similar to, maybe just lift it from that policy and put it in the content here, because if you were to read through this policy, if you're doing a fundraiser and you're like, oh, I better read the fundraiser policy, you read this and you would never encounter this notion about fundraising activities needing to promote health and wellness. Or
Encouraging them to promote health and
I can't-
wellness.
What was that line? Yeah, encourage.
Yeah.
Could
Jeremy,
you read that line
one more
again?
time.
Student organizations will be encouraged to engage in fundraising projects that are supportive of healthy eating and student wellness.
Okay.
Yeah, because, I mean, if I were trying to wrap my head around like a fundraising thing, I'd read this and I wouldn't read the cross-references. I wouldn't dive in there necessarily, expecting to find new information about things I'm supposed to know about a fundraising policy. I expect what I need to know about fundraising should be in the body of this document. That's my expectation.
Maddie?
Let Jen go first, I forgot.
Jen?
I think if you're going to do that, you're then going to need to add something that says somebody gets the last word on it, because that's really vague, like promotes healthy. Like, I just cooked a blueberry pie from the pie sale that they have at the high school for Easter. And like, is that a...
Well, that's up to the
So is there, but does it say that they have the, like, if you're going to say something like it needs to promote whatever, sorry, Jeremy, you know you read it twice, but to promote health, let's say, like, who gets the last say on that decision?
Well, I mean, Maddie?
That's what I was going to say. So first of all, personally, I'm on board with the no sugar thing, even though I love sugar personally. I mean, if I were to have my personal druthers, I'd be, with Lindsay here, and we would be changing everything to have a much more healthy environment. I think that it might be a little ambitious and it's difficult to do too fast, but I don't disagree with you. I like the language that Jeremy read, and I think there is already language that says that this principal has to approve. And I think there's enough leeway in there in the language is talking about promoting a healthy lifestyle. Blueberry pie is part of my healthy lifestyle. It's part of the joy of summer in Maine. And, and anyway, and a good hike, and I burn it off. So, I think it's flexible enough so that we're not saying that we never have any fundraisers that have no sugar in them ever. Like, I would love to see us encourage more of an environment that has less of that stuff. Personally, I feel like the language that's suggested here moves us in the right direction.
Okay, so the amendment on the floor is to add all fundraising activities shall comply with all applicable board policies. Yeah?
So I will amend my amendment to swap what I just said for that sentence that is in JL.
Would you amend your second? Okay. Okay, so the amendment on the floor is essentially to lift the sentence from the wellness policy that Jeremy has read to us multiple times. I won't make you read again if everybody understands the content behind it. Essentially encouraging wellness and thinking about that as you're creating your fundraisers. Okay, so that's the amendment on the floor. Everybody ready to vote on that amendment? So this is just the amendment. It's not the policy. It's just the amendment to the policy to add that. Okay? All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that passes. So the original motion on the floor is now amended to add 12A, A12, excuse me, as Jeremy has read to us. Okay, from the wellness policy. All right. Oh, you have another one. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or amendment? Lindsay?
I just want to defend my character for a moment. I also eat blueberry pie. And
we were starting to worry about you, Lindsay.
I never said no sugar ever. I just think the volume is out of whack in our society. Your character is Lindsay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I completely agree with the sugar comment as well. Yes.
So the second amendment is in regards to A7, which currently reads, the following shall be communicated to students and parents/guardians regarding the fundraising activity. And I would amend that to read, the following shall be communicated to students and parents/guardians prior to the start of the fundraising activity. Because I don't think, I mean, the way it's written now, it leaves it open that the information can go after the fundraiser at any point in time, and the only benefit to having that information go out is if parents receive it before the fundraiser.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to adjust it to say prior to the fundraising activity. Is there a second for that motion? Mara? Discussion on that amendment? Yeah.
Is there any circumstance that, I don't know who I'm asking this to, but is there any circumstance where that would be a problem or a challenge for a fundraiser?
I think that's an administrator question. So
Yeah, I don't, who could answer?
That's my question as well, because I mean, I know in some cases we have the blanket just thing that goes out at the beginning of the year to cover all fundraisers. So would adding that change now make it necessary, because we have talked about this with the principals, would that now make it necessary for the principal to send something out before every single fundraiser? It looks like Becky's ready to answer that.
No, prior, if you do it in the beginning of the year, that's prior to fundraiser. So as long as the communication goes out before the fundraiser, it doesn't say how early. There isn't a timeline that restricts how early or how late, but it needs to be before the fundraiser.
the only hard part, I mean, there is some specificity in what has to go out in regards to the description and the names and the, I'm not sure a letter at the beginning of the year would have all that detail. Maybe it would, but I'm not sure.
And I would say that, to me, this is around student organizations.
Yes, because we're in A
And
again.
so
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of student organizations know at the beginning of the year what they're going to be doing for fundraising.
No, but I'm not.
You know, I also have to sign them all, and I just, you know, there are a lot of organizations that might, I I think even if you think of the recent OM fundraising, I just think there's a lot of things that are happening spontaneous. But what were you going to say?
Yeah,
That's a
but
different one.
adding prior to doesn't say that it has to be in the beginning of the year. It can be at any point before the fundraiser begins. So logically, one would expect that the letter will go out before each fundraiser, only because what Michelle stated, that all that information may not be available months ahead of time. And also, it probably is more effective to send it right before the fundraiser and not 5 months ahead of time.
Right.
So my expectation would be that the letter would go, relatively soon, or relatively close to the timeline when the fundraiser starts. But I just want this to say prior, so that we don't end up in a situation where, oh, we forgot about that one. Well, I'll send it after the fact, because then what's the point of sending it after the fact? You need to send it before, because it's information that parents...
Or at least at the start, because I mean, what I'm thinking is it's sort of I think how these things typically run is they roll them out to the students, they provide them the information that they need, and they sort of send them on their way with their package of information that they go home and hopefully share with their family. And I would say that's the start of the fundraising. And to me, that's where I would expect to see the information, right? So I wouldn't expect them to, okay, next week we're gonna, here's all the data, your kids are gonna get it next week. But I mean, even if it just says at the start of the fundraising activity, so that it's, yeah.
And the OM stuff, that doesn't apply, because this is in section A.
Right.
And that would be
C.
something like that would be in section C. And even though I brought up the concern about principals, I believe all the schools handle this by putting it in their announcement, so I think they handle it pretty effectively.
Yeah.
So I would like to amend my amendment to read to students and parents/guardians at the start of the fundraising activity, instead of prior, because that seems to cause some issues.
Mara, would you amend your second? Okay. Any other questions on that I'm particularly interested in the policy group, if they see any pitfalls of that? No? Okay. Any other questions? Ready to vote on that amendment? Okay. All of those in favor of the amendment? None opposed? Thank you. Okay. 7. Any other comments on the policy? Oh, Lindsay.
I'm just looking at the sentence that we added, students will be encouraged to engage in activities that model health and wellness, or whatever that actually said, from the other policy. I think I got it, but
He's going to have it memorized by the end of the night.
Is that what you just said? Does that belong in section D? Because I want it to apply to all the activities. I don't want it to just apply to student-run ones. I want it to apply to section B, humanitarian and charitable causes. I want it to apply to section C, student participation in parent group fundraising activities. Would it fit as a number 3 in coordination of fundraising activities? Students will be encouraged to engage in activities that model health and wellness, as stated in.
But it does say, if you look at section C, the second paragraph, there's a sentence and then it says the paragraph. It does end with all the work that they do there shall be in accordance with section A in this section. And B also has that in accordance with the guidelines, section A of this policy. So A applies to all kinds of fundraising activities from all groups. So if you put it in A, it applies to everyone.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Thank
It does.
you. Nice.
All right. All right, so So we don't have an amendment right now. Okay. Sorry,
I think we're ready to vote on
I have another amendment.
No, we got another one. Hold on.
Okay. So the next one and last one is for A1. And it adds,
Started at the bottom and moved up.
yeah, it adds a few factors to be considered by principals when determining whether the fundraising activity complies. So it will add, the way it reads right now, it says, all student fundraising activities shall be approved in advance by the building principal, who will determine if it provides sufficient educational or financial benefits to the school and/or students, and whether the fundraising activity complies with Section D of this policy. So I would like, in addition to considering the educational and financial benefits to the school, that the principals also consider student participation rate and community building value. And I can explain why I would add those if people have questions. One would be a student participation rate, and the second, community building value. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so motion, do we have a second? All right, thank you. And for discussion. Questions on that?
I think Valerie was going to explain a little bit more.
I can, yeah. So the first one, which would be the participation rate, there are a few fundraising activities that happen during the day that at one of the meetings, the high school principal, Jen, mentioned that very, very few students actually participate in. So she said, 3%, 5%. And then there were others at the middle school that also had low participation rate. So I'm not suggesting that we say at a certain percentage you don't continue with a fundraiser. I'm just saying that it would be, I think, a good thing to do for principals to see how many students participate in the fundraiser before class time is used to promote or present that fundraiser. Because we have 3% who participate and 97% who are not in class and they don't participate, then something to think about.
Can you talk about the community building part?
Yeah, and I guess it kind of relates to community building. In my experience as a fundraiser, there are usually very small numbers of members, a very small percentage of the community starts any effort. Even if there's a lot of interest in something, like our athletic fields, our new athletic field, it was a handful of people, like 10 people, that started with 3, and then it was 10. And then it took $1 million from Nike to get the whole community engaged. And anything I've been involved with, that's how it is. It's like a couple leaders step forward and they're willing to do the hard work of trying to enroll a lot of other people. So there's a lesson around civic engagement in that. I'm frustrated by it all the time, but it just seems, yeah, because it's hard work, but it's just, I think it's human nature. I mean, and it's the same way with our kids. I mean, you elect a slate of officers, and those 4 kids are trying really hard to get their classmates to help them, and it's hard to get the kids involved in the class fundraisers. I wouldn't want the principals to say because there's a low percentage of kids involved that they wouldn't do it, because we still want to give them the opportunity to learn that and to step up and become the leaders that some of them will become.
I don't support it only because, not because I don't agree with the content. I do. I think that we would hope that the principals would consider those things. I just don't want to limit. I don't want to micromanage the administrators by detailing what they can and can't do with their powers, I guess. So that's why I wouldn't, because I wouldn't want to take that away and give them the too micromanaging is what I'm.
So we are already spelling out 2, educational value and financial value. And there are factors to consider. It's not telling them at a certain point you can do it or you can do it. It's just basically encouraging to think about multiple factors. In the end, they have the discretion to approve any fundraiser they want. But it's just a way of reminding them that, you're using instructional time to present something if a lot of the students are not accessing it because they're not interested and they don't participate. Just think about it, because it's time that otherwise will be used for other educational activities.
I would support it if I don't like the language in there for reasons I said before about percentage of participation, but I do support the language about the aspect of community building. And I agree, we're just asking them to think about it. I don't think it necessarily limits them, but I would prefer half of what you've suggested.
Mara.
Trying to think of how to formulate this. So in the first paragraph, we talk about schools and student organizations as the fundraisers. And when Maddie made her comment, the previous school board member made her comment, it made me think of how in A, we don't really distinguish between schools. Like it says students and student organizations. And to me, that makes it sound like a fundraiser that the students are like, we want to do this, as opposed to a fundraiser where the school has decided everybody's going to sell magazines, right? Like that's not coming from the students. So I guess to me, when we're thinking about community, when we're thinking about the amendment, there might be different things you want to consider, like whether it's coming from whether it's a school fundraiser or whether it's a student-driven fundraiser, which made me think of like the track where it's coming from the community. I don't know how we would change this to distinguish between those two. I don't know if it's important to distinguish between those two, but I think if we have a school fundraiser, it is important to consider the community building value. And maybe we're selling chocolate from a local business instead of, some national company or something like that. I think
Out of Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Oh. Well, I mean, just an example, not referencing any company in particular. But just that sort of thing. But I think it could, I don't know, it could be different depending on who is the fundraiser being driven by? Where is it? Who's deciding that we're going to do this fundraiser? Because that's not just, we're sort of the way it's written here makes it sound like it's the students that are deciding. Because it says fundraising guidelines for students and student organizations.
Yeah, and I think the definition behind the students is they're the sellers of whatever it is, right? Whether they decided that they wanted to sell it or whether it was a school decision and they're the ambassadors out in the community trying to fundraise for whatever the project is. Mm-hmm. I guess from the participation rate, I do agree. I think they both are a little micromanaging from my perspective. Educational and financial benefits are the two main buckets. There might be ones that are more educationally driven but don't raise a ton of money, but they are still worthwhile. That makes sense. There might be some where it's only a small number, but they raise a ton of money for a program. I'd hate to see those go away. And I think in those two buckets, everything else you're talking about probably gets captured. So I try to, I think back to the contracts we have with our employees, and, there's things in there that we might quantify as, educational policy, and we can't get rid of them because they're already in there, but we don't want to add more. We don't want to continue adding more micromanaging detail, and, well, have you thought about this, and have you thought about that? I mean, we have more than capable administrators, and I think they take those things into account. But I'm interested to hear about the community building piece of what you're trying to capture with that.
There are two things that, in my mind, would fall into that community building value. One is what Maura mentioned, working alongside businesses that are part of the community, groups that are part of the community. So trying to find local partners whenever possible. And then the other one is building community within the school. So having all the students work towards a common goal. So emphasize fundraising activities that bring kids together rather than make kids compete with each other. So those were the two that I thought would be worth thinking about. The broader local community and the within the school community, and how to use fundraisers to try to promote a greater sense of community.
I have a couple suggestions for how we might rewrite that sentence to kind of capture the spirit of the conversation. So it starts out the same. All student fundraising activities shall be approved in advance by the building principal. And then it changes slightly. Who will consider educational or financial benefits to the school and or students, loss of educational time on non-educational activities, level of student interest, that one might be debatable, and potential for building community within the school and supporting the greater local community, or something like that. Like, I think there's a way to kind of capture I think the sentiment is that the loss of educational time should be a part of the consideration. I don't think.
But don't you think that's picked up in educational benefit?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it only talks about the principal considering the educational benefit of the fundraising activity.
That's how you're reading it. That might not be how our administrators are viewing the fundraisers through the lens.
But I think.
Look at number 3, the end of number 3. Lots of instructional time. We spent a lot of time on that.
Oh, it's already in there?
Yes. Minimal impact on instructional time.
Oh, okay. So the student participation rate, that is about the loss. I mean, the concern that you bring up by bringing up that language is that if 97% of the students aren't participating and there's 45 minutes of class time spent teaching about how this fundraiser is going to work, that's the problem. But then would it satisfy you if in 3, where does it say that? The fundraising activity, including any presentation by outside sales, blah, 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 shall have minimal impact on instructional time and not be unduly demanding of student. So doesn't 3 cover your concern?
It does in some ways, but not in others, because the difference between 3 is that it says the whole presentation, try to limit the time that you use in a way, but it doesn't say if 100% of students are participating and you take 45 minutes, that's totally fine, because everyone's participating, everyone's learning, everyone's engaged. But if you have 97% students who are unengaged, disengaged, and only 3 are excited about the idea, then it changes the equation, it changes the balance.
Well, I mean, I think that gets picked up in the, minimal impact, right? So trying to minimize the overall impact. Yeah. I mean, I think it's captured. But.
Yeah, the way I read that, the minimal impact, I just read the straight number of minutes that kids are out of the classroom, not what kids are actually doing during those 45 minutes when you take them out.
Yeah.
That's all.
I think that would be tough to know ahead of time. I mean, unless it's one that they've done forever and they know that 2 kids do it every year, but.
Yeah, it would only apply to those that are repeats, obviously.
Right. Yeah, Jen.
Thank you. I just feel uncomfortable putting things in policy that I feel like when we're having this discussion, these are discussions that Becky's having with her administrators. And I feel like we're trying to dictate how the administrators and Becky would come to a decision on these fundraisers. I think we're being very specific. And I just feel really uncomfortable with that.
I feel like I agree. I think trying to be more high level about it. I almost feel more comfortable if we wanted to put something in there like, hey, we'd like to encourage collaboration with local community members, whether it's businesses or something like that. Like, I think that's something we might say, like, hey, if you're going to do a fundraiser, we'd love to see you partnering with local companies when possible. Like, maybe it's not possible. Maybe what you want to do only has a national provider. But, like, consider it when you're thinking about it, right? I mean, I feel like that's more our role than telling them, okay, well, check this box and then go,
Right. I also don't know if even that conversation has to be in policy.
Sure, I agree.
I think it's a great conversation, which I think we can have those conversations with administrators and with Becky about what we'd like to see. It does not mean that we have to create a policy that.
No, I agree, yeah. Maddie, you're good. Okay, so, Mara.
Could I make a suggestion to amend the amendment to separate, that we vote separately on the student participation rate and the community building value? That way, if folks would support one or the other, it's not an all or nothing.
Are you okay with that? Okay. So we'll have two votes. One will be on adding the factor of student participation. And so we'll do that one first. Do people feel comfortable with a vote on that right now? So the first, the motion from Valley, a second from Mara. All those in favor of adding that factor to be considered by the administrators of student participation? You tell us when you're ready, Cynthia. Yeah. Okay. Opposed? Okay, so that amendment fails. So now we will move to the second amendment, which is to add the factor of community building into the consideration by the principals for a fundraising activity. All those in favor of that? And opposed? So that amendment passes. Okay. So, all right, I just want to, and that was your last, okay. Yes.
I feel like the amendment passed in concept, but not in language, because the language shifted, and Lindsay had a suggestion in there that I really liked for a rewording of that paragraph. Do we need to determine that now, or can Lindsay do that with Cynthia, Lindsay and Valley and Cynthia confer about that, or how did we do that?
You want to hear it, Cynthia? Yeah. Okay.
I would agree that just adding the term community building value is too vague. And I guess one could make a motion. I'm going to try this. I would like to make a motion to revise the
Make an amendment. Motion to amend.
Well, we already passed the amendment.
Yeah, but you need to amend, because so now the original is amended, so you need to make an amendment to change it.
Change the one we just passed, or the original one? Because I think we just passed it, so it's now.
So now the original one is now amended.
Right, so
Yeah.
I think I need to,
Amend the original one.
no, amend what has just been, make a new motion.
I don't know if you can do that, but you could try.
Yeah.
And she could do what you suggested, potentially. She could make an amendment to add the language,
To adjust the language, yeah.
just to add add something
I
in
would
here.
make, I'm just gonna try this. I don't know if it's legal. But someone will let me know. I would like to make a motion.
It's your job. You're the Robert's Rules person.
I know, and this is what I think is the right thing to do. So let me go. All right. So I would like to make a motion that we revise community building value to, so the thing that just passed was all student fundraising activities shall be approved in advance by the building principal, who will determine if it provides sufficient educational or financial benefits to the school and or students. I would just say, and greater local community there. No?
I would suggest that we send it back to policy and they work on the exact wording to capture the essence of what we just voted.
I would like that. I'd like Kate to weigh in on it also. But Michelle, if we can review the tape, whatever Michelle said in that conversation, and you suggested just adding a bullet about that, or even just taking the bullet that you added and inserting that language into this paragraph, I think we could work on. I know it means third read, but hopefully it's a quick fix.
Yeah, so we wouldn't end up voting on it today at all. There wouldn't be a second read vote, because second read makes it final and official. So it would be tabled. But I just want to sort of cover what we've adjusted, just to make sure it matches up with what Cynthia has. So the three amendments to what we have here are 1A, which will be determined based on the policy committee's input, to somehow include community building in the factors considered by principals. In section A7, adding to the start of the at the start of the fundraising activity for when the communication will go out to parents and students and guardians. And then A12, lifting that whole paragraph from the wellness, which Jeremy has now memorized, and inserting it as A12. Is that what you have?
That's what I have. So if you have,
I would just add that it has been unclear in the conversation, community building value. I think there's two ideas in there that are separate. I think it's building community within the school as one concept, and then supporting and building the surrounding, I don't know what we call
District,
that typically, that
right.
external, not external, but it's the greater community around the schools, the local businesses, community members feeling engaged with the schools, that type of thing. And that might be hard to have those both
Distinguished.
we want both of those present, those ideas present.
Did you have a comment, Ray?
Well,
There's Ray.
I was just concerned about, didn't quite understand where you were initially going with that community building, because I think Lindsay said it right. I think there's two different avenues going that way. And we talked about this quite extensively at the policy committee, and the community building within the schools or the programs. The reason why I think that some people in that meeting, principals and some people, school board members, felt that wasn't, that language wasn't adopted, was like different athletic teams, different things, give prizes around, and the initiative that if everyone's not getting the same thing in return, that was the intent of that language, so you couldn't give prizes out. And like, high school soccer team that I'm involved in, the people that did the most shots, and same with the basketball team this winter that raised the most money through that, got prizes. The intent of that language that was brought to the policy committee was so that couldn't happen, which Jen and myself felt would definitely severely impact the amount of fundraising that teams can do and clubs can do and school programs can do. So that was the intent of that language with that. And then the other intent of, we always try to use community-based programs without a doubt. But I think the difference is, like, if I had to guess, I would say Mass Landing probably brings in over $5,000 through their magazine drive with Scholastic. We bring in about $250 with Sherman's. Sherman's doesn't want to take on any more schools within our community. So, like, if Lisa reached out to them, they're going to say we're at capacity with the middle school. So have you tried? Yeah. Exactly. So I mean that's we try to do that, and in some ways we like not being things that are not community based, because like some fundraisers, if you look at the zip codes of people who are buying, they're not in any of our 3 towns, and like that's
Grandma
even
doesn't
better
really
because we're
particularly
pulling in
care,
someone
right.
else's money to support our programs. So yeah, it's not a local business, but it's not local people who are buying the majority of stuff either. So like that was another thing that we we try to use local, but sometimes there's advantages to other things as well. And those were the kind of the conversations why that those two didn't make it through policy.
So I guess I would ask the folks that were in favor of the community building addition, does that clarification, do you want to provide any feedback to the policy committee to consider about those 2 items, right? So do we feel like community building in the school necessarily means no prizes, or could it mean something else? Do we want to still include it, but the concept behind it isn't that, you can't win a prize? Because,
Yeah, I think there needs to be some definite clarification. And like Ray said, I think it would be very detrimental if they took the prizes out, not only for raising the money, but for teaching kids that there is competition in this world, and when they move out of school, they're going to have to compete. And so it gives them a little leg up on learning on how to do that and stuff. Yeah, we definitely need clarification. And are we voting on that tonight? Are we telling them tonight what we
So I don't think we're voting, because we're asking them to come back to us with some language, but I would love to be able to give them the direction for what we mean by it. So, we can say, go back and figure out something about community building, but if we all feel strongly that that means no prizes, we should tell them that now. Okay. Or no competition, we should tell them that now. Or if that's not what we mean, then we can provide that feedback so that they can bring something to us that reflects what we want them to. We're asking them to word something, not create the meaning behind it. We should be providing the meaning behind it right now.
Okay. So that being said, Candace, I would like to put my word in that my meaning does not mean to stop competition.
Jen?
I'm wondering if after the clarification from the policy committee that Ray just shared, if that we want to reconsider the amendment that we just voted on. Like, does that... Right.
Well, no, we voted on it. We're tabling the vote on the whole policy.
Like, I didn't vote for it, but if I had voted for it, I would now want to change my vote. Does that make sense?
I feel the exact same way.
Okay.
Yes, Mara.
I guess from my perspective, I was thinking of it as both of those things that were described, but also I was thinking of it as a consideration. So I don't know if in A1 right now it says we'll determine if it provides sufficient educational or financial benefits. To me, those seem like really concrete things. Like, in order for the fundraiser to happen, that has to be the way, that has to be considered, and it must do that. It must provide those benefits. Whereas when I voted for the community building value, I was thinking of that as a consideration. So I guess I would be in favor of that sort of wording, whereas the way Ray described it, they could consider that, administrators could certainly consider that, but then if it's a situation where it doesn't make sense for the school, that's okay.
Right. So similar to the wellness disclaimer, like, they're encouraged to think about that, if our goal is not to tank their fundraising efforts. Like, sorry guys, you can't have little pom-poms because, and then none of the kids are, I mean, we just went through this at the Jump for Heart, right? I don't know if all the schools do that, but they just did it, and they got these little things if they raised a certain amount of money, and rightly or wrongly, that encourages them, you know, and motivates them, yeah.
And I'm not remembering all the details of that meeting, but I also don't want to tank the fundraising efforts. I'm not in favor of doing away with prizes, and I don't equate positive community building within a school with doing away with prizes and some healthy competition. So I agree that, I mean, I think it should be general. That's my understanding of what we voted on.
I agree that it gives still principals have all the discretion on what to approve and what not to approve. And when I talk about building community within the school, it also means not engaging in activities that maybe highlight wealth disparity within the student body, for example. So just being aware and paying attention to the effect that certain fundraisers may have on students who may not come from affluent backgrounds and may have a harder time fundraising and not being able to access certain, whatever it is, rewards. Because I don't think that's good for our students in general. And I would like to have the focus be on the more positive aspect of fundraising together to achieve a goal together.
And I think that, I mean, from all the fundraisers I've seen, that has been the primary focus, right? Like, it's not, did you meet your personal goal? It's, as a school, did we meet our goal? And, you know, one of the tools they use, you know, to motivate individual kids is, I think, the prizes. But I think it's a point well taken. Lindsay?
I don't think this can be in the policy, but like, I mean, I don't want to limit competition. I mean, it's the real world, eventually. But I think that we can protect them from the real world.
Kindergartners have a little time.
No, but I do think that there are thoughtful ways to celebrate. Like for example, a prize could be given. So say you're having kids, you know, try to ask for donations. Prize could be given for the number of asks, not the dollar value amount raised, and that makes it a non-wealth issue, and it's an effort and engagement celebration. Mm-hmm. And in the fundraising world, that's true too. Like, all you can do is ask. I mean, you can't control. It's not up to the, you know, person asking to determine a dollar amount or a yes or no. All you can do is ask, and I think that's a more powerful lesson to the kids than, you know, who raised more, because that all has to do with your network, the wealth of your social network, and that's a pretty ugly thing to be like injecting into school culture.
Yeah, or even having a common goal for the school. If we meet this target, then we all celebrate together and get some kind of reward, rather than highlighting the individual amounts that kids can fundraise. Because, as we know, we all come from different backgrounds, and some kids will have an easier way doing less asking, raising the money.
Erica?
Are we setting this into a policy right now? Because there's a lot of discussion, but I think this is the policy committee, right? Should be doing this. So we've been on this for 35 minutes now.
I was just saying, Lindsay can tell us.
For a while.
So I just want to provide Cynthia and the policy committee with the direction of what we want them to draft, right? So do you feel like you have the consensus? No. Okay. So, I mean, is the question about, can we just do a straw vote on, you know, do we want to eliminate competitions and prizes? I mean, is that what you need to know?
I don't know why we're talking about that. We didn't bring that to you, and the amended language about talking about the community doesn't bring that up. Ray brought that up.
Valley mentioned it in her discussion about community building as well, so it was brought up by the person who made the motion.
I did, but in a
After
different
the
light.
fact.
No, earlier.
Well, I did mention that building community within the school basically means encouraging the kids to work together towards a common goal.
Not to win a prize.
But I'm not saying rule out, I'm not ruling out the prices. I'm making the distinction about prices that separate kids from each other and that may highlight some of difference in wealth in their families or difference in opportunities in raising actual money, dollar amounts, versus giving prices that encourage kids to work together, to learn together, and to build a community. So I'm not against prices. It's just how the prices are used that can or cannot build community.
I feel clear. This is, if we were still talking about the wellness policy, it would be like us talking about the merits of sugar right now. I feel clear that the policy committee understands that we're going to write in a general guideline around aspects of community in schools and the surrounding community for the consideration of the principal, where they can then think in greater detail all the points that we just attempted to discuss amongst ourselves. I don't think any of that belongs in policy.
Agreed.
And I didn't feel like Valley disagreed or Lindsay disagreed. I feel like we just delved into what we meant by it, what might have informed our decision-making, why we voted a certain way, but it doesn't belong in policy.
I agree, but I think that that's sometimes what happens when things are in policy, is what it gets what someone's definition of community building could very easily translate into I don't feel you should have I mean, like, that's what someone could say, is all I'm saying. That's why, again, I just like to have as little as possible in the policies to create issues.
I definitely agree. I think that's what the policy committee is charged with doing. I think that's the fear. I think the fear is that we would get too prescriptive and then we back ourselves into some kind of corner that's difficult to get out of. But I don't feel like that's what we're being asked to do.
Okay. So I will just say that, listening to all of you, I'm struggling with, if you're going to put a phrase in there that everybody is interpreting differently, that is putting the administration in an awkward place. So that's my only concern. I mean, when we look at the financial and educational benefits, I think that's pretty clear. But when you're talking about putting a phrase in there that says community building, and for one person that means less competition, and to another person it may mean, there's a lot of competition that's building community at the track and field, right? So I worry about that, but so if there could be some guidelines when the policy committee comes back around what does that kind of mean, and I agree we don't want to get too detailed, but right now I just don't feel like there's a common understanding of that phrase, and when there's not a common understanding, then I wonder why we're kind of putting it into policy. So that's my guidance to the policy committee that has to grapple with this.
I hear that as a very valid concern, and with respect, that's your job. And we trust you with it. I mean, I feel like our job as a legislative body is to set policy and to keep it we should not get too prescriptive about our intentions, because we are a collection of individuals with different backgrounds and different ideas. And we hire you as the leader to interpret what we have put into policy and to roll it out with your team. And we entrust you with that.
So that's great. That's clear direction, because what I'm hearing is we'll put it in there and we will trust the administrators to interpret that and to apply it consistently, and I can easily do that with the administrative team, define what we mean by that.
And should, in some future date that it's not you and it's some different team and it's not being done well, and this body loses confidence in those people, then, obviously that gets reflected in performance evaluation, et cetera, et cetera. But that's why I think we understand each other.
And I just want to make a final comment that in the same way that we don't all share a common understanding of this community building notion, I doubt that we all share the same opinion in terms of what financial benefit means, for example. Because that can be interpreted in a million ways, and educational value can also be interpreted in many, many ways. So we will never have a common understanding of something that's on purpose written to be general.
Okay, so JJE will be tabled. You guys will come back with some language on that. So this was second read. I would just encourage folks, if they have big amendments like that, maybe to do it during first read so we don't keep bringing them back.
Yeah, I would like to make just the mention that I did send these amendments to policy to give them the opportunity to work on them ahead of time. And before the second read.
Right, but, well, I mean, I think it's fine. You're welcome to make amendments. I'm just thinking of, in terms of efficiency, we spent a good amount of time discussing this policy last time, and we could have made these amendments to it at that point because these changes aren't different from what we saw last time. So it's fine. We got there at the end of the day. Okay, so we'll see that one back. All right. Unfinished business? None. That's great. New business. Okay, this is a housekeeping item that we vote on every year. This is a motion for consideration of action that pursuant to section 14854 of Title 20A, that the Finance Committee be authorized to transfer not more than 5% of the total appropriation for any cost center in the fiscal year 20 operating budget to another cost center or among other cost centers, provided that the total fiscal year 20 operating budget shall not be increased by such transfers. So essentially what this means is between the warrants, if there's an overage on one and an underage, that's not a word. Shortfall, let's go with overage and shortfall, let's go with those. As long as it's not more than 5% of the budget, it could be transferred. We've done this in the past for like facilities, track and field, and I don't think we do it, even actually make the transfers every year, but it gives us the ability. We do it in the last meeting in June before they close out the year. So that's what this is about. So do we have a motion? John, second. Erica, any questions or comments on this? All those in favor? Opposed? No? All right. No personnel? Public comment? Anything you want to share? Okay, then we would take a motion to adjourn. Erica? Valerie? All those in favor? Great, thank you.